Good afternoon, everybody, and a warm welcome to the second day of the ISPAR Conference 2020. Today's session is hosted by the Centre for Physical Education, Sport and Human Movement. I'm your host today. My name is Dr. Joanne Hill, and I'm the lead for the Centre. Today is about showcasing our research in ISPAR, about celebrating researcher and alumni success and building external relationships. This is why we have put together a great diverse group of speakers today from different institutions and organisations, people who we already work with or are beginning to work with. Dissemination is key to impact, so feel free to share your thoughts about today on Twitter using the hashtag ISPAR20. Just wanted to tell you a little bit about ISPAR. We have 3 research centres led by me, Joanne Hill, Professor Angel Chater and Dr. Ian Fletcher. Each research centre is split into 3 special interest groups. The Centre for Physical Education, Sport and Human Movement brings together researchers with a shared critical perspective on participation, policy and representation in and of sport, movement and physical activity in the community, in physical education and school sport, and in physical culture. Researchers in this area are building on a century of research in physical education in Bedford. Our research practice is underpinned by qualitative, reflective, and strengths-based inquiry, action research, and narrative. We are engaged in theoretical and practice-based research with impact in school and community settings. We welcome external relationships and have developed collaborations with local schools and local authority sport and physical activity providers. This research is also shared in our teaching across our undergraduate and postgraduate programmes. I'm delighted today that to have as part of our speakers alumni and current students from MA, PE and Sport Pedagogy and ISPAR's postgraduate research degrees. The conference this year is a 3-day event. This is day 2. You can catch up with yesterday's session on the university YouTube site, and you're not too late to sign up to tomorrow's session if you wish. Let's have a look at the agenda for today. We are new to virtual conferences, so please bear with us if we have any technical issues or delays. By moving the conference online, though, we have been able to take the opportunity to reach a wider audience than those who might otherwise be unable to travel to Bedford. So thank you again to everybody for joining us today. We have 11 presentations. In a change from the advertised schedule, Stuart Dorrell of Caveman Conditioning is sadly unable to join us today due to a family bereavement, so our condolences to him and his family at this time. Instead, we have personal trainer Kate Dorr of Discover Strength and Fitness filling in. In the interest of equity, we don't have a keynote speaker, strictly speaking. All speakers have got the same time. Apart from me, I'm doing a shorter presentation so that we can fit everybody in. I ask you to remain muted and turn off your video unless you are one of the speakers. You are welcome to ask any questions in the chat. This is being monitored, and we hope to have an engaging dialogue in the chat happening in addition to the presentations. Wherever you are watching from, we embrace an active campus. We encourage you to stand and move around during the presentations. All right, so I'm going to introduce our first speakers, led by Dr. Julie Stirrup at Loughborough University, along with her colleagues, Dr. Oliver Hooper and Dr. Rachel Sanford. Over to you 3. You are welcome to unmute and share screen now.
Great, thank you, Joanne. I'm going to start today. My name is Rachel Sanford, but I'm presenting today with my colleagues, Oliver Hooper and Julie Stirrup. We'll all do a little bit today, so we'll try not to take too much time so that the others don't have time to speak. What we wanted to talk about today really is a recent blog we did for Borough that we wrote in collaboration with other colleagues at Loughborough University. And that was entitled PE with Joe Blogs, The Rise and Risks of Celebrity Teachers. And just to provide a bit of background to that really, the blog itself was not positioned to specifically critique Joe Wicks or celebrity online fitness provision really, or the use of social media or online learning really. So we definitely didn't want to position it in a sort of celebrity bashing place, although I understand that perhaps it was accepted as that in some ways. Rather, to be honest, the the place that it came from was a critique of what really was being done in the name of physical education, and how physical education itself was being seen during the lockdown. So in looking at some of the issues around that, we were looking at what we could learn really from the use of celebrities such as Joe Wicks, who were doing a great job of rallying the masses and getting engagement and participation for children, for families in physical activity. But the key message we were trying to give really was that it was physical activity and not physical education. And the online sessions should not really be termed physical education in that way. And that those who deliver them should not necessarily be seen as physical education teachers. So for us, it was really the blog itself was an opportunity to pause and reflect. So there were a number of things within the blog, and you've seen the link on there. You can go and read that if you'd like to. There are two key messages we want to talk to today, really, and focus on within the discussion. The first of those is the role of physical education in supporting holistic learning and development. And the second is the importance of ensuring high quality physical education provision. And Ollie and Julia go on to look at those just now. But ultimately, those two messages we feel feed into broader discussions that we know are taking place nationally and internationally within the physical education field about the place and purpose of physical education across all ages and stages. Over to you, Ollie.
Okay, so as Rachel stated, we're going to focus on two key messages today, the first of which is all around holistic learning. I'm sure that many people that are part of today's session would agree that PE has much potential to contribute to holistic learning, by which we mean learning across multiple domains. So the psychomotor, the cognitive and the affective, or rather the doing, the thinking and the feeling. And as Julie will discuss, holistic learning really is a desired outcome of that high quality PE that we're striving for within the field. Therefore, if we're going to try and realise holistic learning, there does need to be a focus beyond just the physical. Don't get me wrong, physical education should have a physical component to it, and that psychomotor domain is a key part of it, but it shouldn't be the only part. And I guess what we witnessed being delivered in the name of PE during lockdown led us to question whether or not this was going to bring about that holistic learning that the subject has arguably been striving for many years now. We would argue it wasn't. What we witnessed were sessions that had a rather narrow fitness focus and which were often delivered through rote instruction, which meant that important aspects of high quality PE, such as social and emotional learning, seemed quite absent. And what we witnessed were these performative outcomes whereby pupils learned routines and they performed these simple fitness moves, some were complex, and activities. But it wasn't what I would argue high quality PE looks like. And I guess the key point for us is that holistic learning doesn't just happen. It requires planning. What are our intended learning objectives? What pedagogical practices are we going to employ to try and realise these? And it's for these reasons that we were conscious, cautious, and I guess somewhat critical of what was being done in the name of PE during that lockdown period. And I guess that leads us on now to our second key message that Ju's going to talk about around high quality PE.
Thanks, Ollie. So our second key message really is high quality PE. And I guess we start off by sort of recognising that certainly within an English primary school context, we're starting to see more outsourcing of PE, which is changing the workforce and the nature of that workforce. And as we and others have alluded to, there's a potential for this raising some issues for PE as a subject. So things like the position of PE within the curriculum, the professionalism or deprofessionalism of the subject, and the learning that's taking place in PE lessons in the name of PE. So for us during lockdown, the positioning of fitness classes and physical activity as PE delivered by celebrities really led us to revisit and think, what is high quality PE and why do we need high quality PE? So as Rachel sort of alluded to, we do recognise that the celebrity offering did engage many young people, but again, it was in physical activity rather than what we would see as PE. And as Ollie's mentioned, it was a very narrow focus in terms of content, predominantly fitness, and very much about simple instruction. Whereas for us, high quality PE goes beyond this. offering young people much more, which is why we advocate for PE to be delivered by qualified teachers with pedagogical, curriculum, content, knowledge, as well as knowledge of their learners, which in turn allows young people to engage in relevant and meaningful lessons, which are planned with the curriculum in mind and learning objectives, which look at the holistic learner, which are delivered in ways that ensure there's differentiation, development in terms of building on learners' prior knowledge and understanding, and assessing in a way that allows all pupils to achieve within that lesson. So rather than adopting a one-size-fits-all approach, which is what we feel we saw with those online sessions delivered by celebrities such as Joe Wicks. Now, that said, we do acknowledge that often one of the criticisms levelled at PE is it's not as relevant as it could be for learners. And this is perhaps something we need to consider when we're moving forward and we're thinking about the direction in the future of PE. And that sort of leads us to some of our concluding thoughts, or rather reflective questions. If you could just push the next slide on, Ollie. Thank you. So I guess coming back to the main point about why we wrote the blog, it was really to look at the idea of the place of PE. And for us, lockdown has been an opportune time to take stock and consider what it is PE offers within the curriculum. Recognise that there's much to be learnt from wider offers, whether that's offers online, whether that's offers via social media. But equally, there's something specific that the profession brings to shaping learning in a relevant way to learners. And I guess for us, it's raised some questions that we sort of wanted to leave you with to reflect on in perhaps your own contexts and your own experiences. So what is the place, or sorry, what place does or should PE have within the curriculum? So things like who delivers it, how do we ensure high quality PE and support and develop the profession to achieve this? What role does PE have in young people's learning? What is the impact of those wider public agendas, for example, health, physical activity, on what teachers can do in the name of PE, and subsequently what learners do in PE and view as PE? And then what is the opportunity for PE moving forwards? What might it look like? And I guess with that, how well equipped is PE to potentially deal with another lockdown? How can we utilise the resources we have, whether that's online, to ensure that the subject is seen as more than just physical activity within and beyond that public domain? So thank you for listening. Obviously, if you've got any questions, I've seen a few come through in the chat. We will look to try and answer those.
Thanks very much to Julie, Rachel and Ollie. We can just about have one question answered. So Michelle, could you select a question and see whether we can get that asked to the speakers?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, hang on. There I am. Yeah, absolutely. So Julia, from Julia Frewer, your question was, is there any evidence that PE delivered online can influence physical activity in the home environment as opposed to the school environment? So Julia, did you want to expand on your question a little bit?
Yeah, so just to give you my background, it's not necessarily PE, but it's more physical activity in young people in general. So my question was, if we want to influence young people's physical activity levels in general, so in different settings, as opposed to just for a couple of hours a week, for example, then could that be a positive of teaching online, to influence sort of maybe the families' perspectives on how important physical activity is, and encourage the family to be more physically active outside of school?
I think we saw some positive outcomes in that regard, maybe during that lockdown period and afterwards. And we did see anecdotally some really positive stories in the media around how those Joe Wicks sessions especially had brought families together doing physical activity. But I guess the one thing that I would say anecdotally, again, from some of those reports coming out, was that actually, if anyone in that family was to lose interest, it was the children. And actually, it very often ended up being the parents that carried on taking part in those fitness sessions, and the child had got bored quite quickly with that. So I guess there's no evidence as such just yet on that front, but it would be interesting to see what the impact might be on physical activity levels from such sessions, and whether or not familial physical activity can help boost how active children are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, and a big round of applause to our 3 speakers. A silent round of applause, unfortunately, because of being online. All right. Thank you very much. I would like to invite Ryan forward to share his screen and upload slides.
That good?
Perfect. Thank you, Ryan.
Fantastic. Right. So thank you so much, Dr. Hill, for inviting me to take part in today's conference. What I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be talking about a series of health videos which I've produced for YouTube. So before I start, just a bit about myself. My name is Ryan Ford. I'm a proud University of Bedfordshire alumni. I studied my undergraduate and postgraduate degree at Bedfordshire. I've been a PE coordinator for 7 years now, and I'm currently working at Roman Hill Primary School. Now, alongside my role as a PE lead, I'm also teaching PE lessons to year 1 to year 6, but I also have been teaching pre-COVID. I've been teaching health lessons in the classroom for about 1 hour a week as well. And the health lessons I've been teaching have been mainly using the Children's Health Project scheme of work to get my ideas and my lesson plans. It's a fantastic scheme of work, and the lesson plans can either be 15 minutes, it can be a conversation, or it can be a longer lesson. So if you want to look at how we can promote health in primary PE and primary school education, I'd highly recommend looking at Children's Health Project. A bit of a similar segue to the last presentation is when we think of health, it's quite a broad stroke. And when we think of health, we usually think about the movement, we think about the physical part. But just like the key message about the holistic learning from the last presentation, health is more than just the physical. So what I do in the health lessons is we also promote healthy thinking, healthy eating, healthy habits alongside healthy movement. So that's the 4 pillars of health which the Children's Health Project promotes. So it was in the middle of my lessons, I started thinking to myself, whose job, whose responsibility is it to be promoting health, not only to our children, but also to the people around us? So we always seem to point the finger in a direction of a certain category of family. So is it the families that are responsible for health? Is it teachers? When it's teachers, is it the PE teachers that are responsible for health? Doctors? Our beloved politicians? But the answer is everyone. Well, I think when we think of health, we need to think about health as being a whole community thing. And it shouldn't be pigeonholed for one community. It should be the whole community which brings together and promotes health. So whilst we're doing my lessons pre-COVID lockdown, I was thinking to myself, how can I, as an educator, fiance, son, brother, friend, colleague, what could I do to help extend the thought of health? Because health is such a fragmented term. If you asked 20 people what they thought health means, it'd be a different subject. But a lot of the time, they'd think about the movement. So what to spread the message of health is so much more than just movement. And it was roughly when I was thinking about this time, we then went into lockdown and all the schools closed. And when the schools closed, it then went to being virtual learning. And virtual learning was fantastic. But again, if you were to ask people, how are you healthy? What were you engaging virtually to make you healthy during lockdown? The chances are they'd be talking about virtual movement. So again, like Joe Wicks, which is fantastic. It was fantastic. And like in the previous message, we can all celebrate these celebrities, like trying to get our children more active. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to offer something different. I wanted to offer something virtually. And this is something which I was planning on doing pre-lockdown. But pre-lockdown, this kind of gave me the incentive to start what I was actually thinking of doing. So what I did is I started, it's in its infancy, by the way, it's in its infancy. I've only done a couple of videos, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to find a platform where I could share quick messages about health for other people in the community. And it was based around the 4 pillars of health that the Children's Health Project does. So what I've done is I've created a YouTube channel, and these are the videos which I've done so far. So if you have a look to the left-hand side, I've made a bit of a mixture of, so far it's been eating, so healthy pita bread pizza, chocolate ice cream, also looking at hobbies. So reading is something which is I'm very passionate about. I think as physical educators, we need to be promoting reading and hobby. I also did a video about what is health, because I wanted to kind of give people a better idea of what health is. And I've done smoothies as well. So I just wanted a very quick video. So if you look to the right, the range of videos have been lasting between 4 minutes to 7 minutes. I didn't want sessions to be very, very long. I want it to be nice and quick, where people could digest the information quickly, and it wouldn't be me rabbiting on for ages and ages. Something short and sharp, which is very easy. So if someone turns around and says, I haven't got time, hopefully that would answer that question. Nice quick videos. So I'd start the video, I'd obviously introduce myself, say hello, and I'd introduce what we'd be doing today. And what I would do is I'd give a very small snippet of information, just to kind of ease us in to what part of health we'd be talking about that day. So I'd be explaining what we were doing, but what we'd do in the videos is I also want to kind of instigate a bit of conversation at home. Something which I was quite critical about a lot of virtual movement, like Joe Wicks, was if we're going to make something more towards PE, we need to be looking at the question element, because it needs to be reflection. If there's no reflection, it's just doing. If it's just doing, it's not PE. So I'm very keen on the questioning element. So in the videos promoting health, I also put a little bit of a chance for you to pause the video. I challenge the learner or the watcher to either think to themselves or have a chat with people at home about the topic today. So this is my hobby one. So what is a hobby? I wanted people to talk about a hobby, and why is having a hobby healthy for us? These are the type of conversations which I'd be having in the class. So I wanted to kind of extend the learning outwards outside of school. What I'd also do is I'd also make sure there's an activity to do as well. So I'd introduce what we're talking about. I would then get people to think about it, and I'd go on to explain why I think said subject is really important for our health. And at the end, I'll always have either an activity or a challenge to do. The challenge is usually to talk to other people. It's usually, why didn't you get your parents to do this? Why don't you speak to your teacher? Can you get a friend to do this? But I also wanted an activity to engage them as well. So this was reading bingo. So to see how many of these boxes they could tick off. The other one is boredom. So talking about hobbies, we were using the word boredom to think of B-O-R, trying to think of an activity they could do starting with each letter. Something very, very quick and easy and engaging. And the reason why I think these videos are really, really important is because when we're in the middle of lockdown, there seems to be a discourse around health, and the discourse seems to be challenging. Health is not being fat. Health is not being overweight. And looking at some of these puns, I know it's in the tabloids, but free bikes to be given out to fat people by the NHS in new healthy living plan. And I think it's really, really important that we don't teach children that to be healthy means to not be fat. We need to be looking at healthy lifestyles. So if we're looking at healthy movement, healthy thinking, we're looking at hydration, we're looking at sleep, we're looking at hobbies, we're promoting positive health rather than looking at health as a way to get less fat. And I love the NHS video because it's kind of normalizing losing weight, which is fantastic, living a healthy lifestyle. But I think in lockdown, there's been a bit of a discourse around health. And I think health is now looking at is not being fat. But like the last presentation said, it's so much more than that, where PE is more than just a physical. Health is so much more than just a movement. So that was my presentation. And so what I like to do is, I'll just go back a bit forward the slides there. So I really, really, really wanted to promote a platform where people could engage in videos. So what I would do is I would teach a lesson in my class, and then what I would do is create a video, and I would send this link out to the parents. I also put it on my personal Facebook for people. I also put it on social media. So if it gets shared, the reason why I haven't included my school name into it is because I want it to be quite universal. I want everyone to have access to this. It's in its infancy. I've only done a few videos, but I think I'll keep adding them. I'll keep adding them because I think it's important to offer those small little videos of health. And if we can get people talking about health, getting people to realize that health is more than just physical. If it helps anyone to maintain a healthier lifestyle, then that's an achievement. So just going back, that's the end of my presentation. If anyone's got any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I've got to run away in a second because I've got an appointment, but I'd love to engage with you on my social media platforms. The middle one is Kids Health UK. That's a Twitter handle for the Children's Health Project. I'd highly recommend giving them a follow because it's an absolutely fantastic way of promoting health in primary education. That's the end.
Thanks so much, Ryan, for that really engaging view of your practice at the moment. Thanks so much. So Kate, would you like to get ready to upload while I just say thanks again to Ryan? If anyone has any questions for Ryan, as he said, he has to leave, but if you put them in the chat, we will make sure that they are sent to Ryan and then shared over our social media, and we'll get back to you with your answers. Or Ryan has put his Twitter handle in the chat. You can send him a message directly to Twitter. All right, I am now going to pass over to our next speaker, who is Kate Dorr of Discover Strength and Fitness, and she's going to unmute and share now. Thank you.
Hello, hopefully I have unmuted. Just double check, I think I have. Okay, thanks for having me today, guys. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I do and talk to you about how I've developed a bit of a community with the women that I train in and around where I live. So like Joanna said, I'm a personal trainer, but I much prefer now the term women's fitness coach or fitness specialist. That kind of tells people a bit more about what I do, really. So I mostly work in a small area of Coventry, and I'm really fortunate, really, that the community we live in part of Coventry is a little village feel, really. So I've been benefited a lot from a very active Facebook group around the community, which talks about all kinds of things that affect us. And lots of word of mouth has enabled me to get to where I am today. I do work mostly with women, most of them are mothers as well. I have a good mix of people, backgrounds, races, religions, ages from about 20 all the way up to about 60 people that I train. So that's kind of who I am at the moment. So I'll just talk a little bit about mostly the work I do is around a group fitness classes. I also do some one-to-one work as well, but for this purpose, it's the community feel in my groups. So before lockdown, we did 2 weekly group sessions at my local primary school. They were really well attended and lots of kind of fun around team games. Small challenges which developed their sense of kind of belonging, and some small competition, but more the competition around themselves, like them beating themselves from last week, not competing between each other. We focused on lots of like fun, hard work, lots of little games. So we played lots of kind of paper, scissors, stone, some card games. So they'd have to choose red or black on card games. And as part of a team, whoever kind of completed and got this kind of 10 red cards would win the challenge. So it was more kind of around luck. I focus those games on not about who can move the fastest or who can do more reps than somebody else. And lots of dice games as well. So roll of the dice would tell people how many reps or how many seconds they did. And again, that's all down to luck rather than somebody who can move faster, because I've got such an array of different fitness levels there. So we also did a Christmas card exchange as well. So we did this last year where I would give each person about 4 or 5 names, and they would have to write a Christmas card to somebody that they knew in the class about something they'd noticed and they were proud or they were impressed with. So I wanted to build this sense of belonging, this sense of community. So what are they proud of? Not just of themselves, what have they noticed somebody else doing really well? And that went down. I didn't know how that was going to go. It was the first year I did it. But I really liked how people responded to that, and something that, for example, they never thought they would be praised on, somebody else had noticed them doing really well with. So that I'm definitely going to do that again this year. And we also did a player of the month. So for each 2 sessions, I would give somebody a player of the month, just a little certificate to say that I'd noticed something as well. And it's not the fastest person, it's not the best person at doing a particular squat, it was who I'd noticed perhaps challenge themselves a little bit more. And we'd always have a round of applause at the end as well. So that developed a really good sense of team for those people there. So then during lockdown, you notice I haven't got a photo for that for during lockdown, because I was doing it all on Zoom. There was no in-person training sessions for about 3 months. So there are no photos for that. But we would do things, again, just around those 2 sessions, I would stick to the same time. So people had a regular time slot that they would come and work out with me on Zoom. And I also, on our very active WhatsApp group, do a daily and then weekly challenges. So there was loads of things I did there. So an AMRAP, everyone loves an acronym, but it's as many rounds as possible. They might have like a few sets and a few reps to get through of a particular exercise. And over the 5 minutes, how many times can they get through that? Also loads of challenges about every minute on the minute. That's the EMOM. So like a 10-minute, like 60 seconds every 10 for 10 minutes, and just working out. So it was only no more than 10 minutes on these daily challenges. People really appreciated just 10 minutes out of their day, especially if they're working from home. They could follow along with me on a little video, and that just gave them 10 minutes out of their day to keep some physical activity going on there. We also did something around the 2.6 challenge, which was some charities that had missed out on the London Marathon, like fundraising that would happen. So we did a little bit for that as well, and everyone chose their own individual charity for that one. We have a really active WhatsApp group. So every day somebody's posting on there about something they've done, whether it's in the group that they've trained with me, or whether they've done something outside, maybe joined a running club, or they ran 5 miles for the first time or something. So we're really supportive there. And I also really worked hard during lockdown to keep them updated with the constant change in government advice around training. I'm a very big believer in that these are their workouts. So they had an interest in when we were going to come back. So I was really keen to keep them updated there. And then around about June time, things started to ease. So I was able to introduce small group training again and kept the Zoom sessions on. As you can see, I was only allowed 5 people per session. So lots of people were still going to be missing out on those in-person sessions. So I kept the Zoom ones going. We were socially distanced, lots of symptom checking, lots of risk assessments, waivers and hand gel just flying around everywhere. But those people really appreciated just being able to get out. And on this particular day was one of the hottest days that we'd had. So they were really appreciative that we could finally get back together there. And then, so where are we now? We're kind of almost fully back to where we were pre-lockdown. I've changed venues from where I was before lockdown, and I'm now able to encourage more people to come. So we're still socially distanced. I can start putting in the team games again, players of the month again, and building back up to almost a full house of my clients back. And like the WhatsApp group is still going strong, and I'm really appreciative of everyone's kind of community spirit there. So when Joe asked me to do this, I kind of thought about what community means and kind of keeping people engaged during the pandemic. And the sense of community is really key to the consistency and longevity of people's fitness journeys. They have a sense of belonging, part of being a team, coming to see same people, week in, week out, having a little chat. People are in it together, this camaraderie of going through something quite challenging. My sessions are quite challenging, and being in it together there. Really lots of fun, lots of camaraderie, social experience as well. People do socialize, they've made friends, they've gone on to running clubs together, and then they still come back and have a chat in our sessions as well. Positive affirmation. So what are we doing well? So that goes back to those Christmas cards that we did. So I often ask them as well, what are you proud of yourself? And it helps them to kind of just think, what have I done really well this week? Or, do you know what? I managed to do those squats for longer than I did 2 weeks ago. And then also, what have they noticed about somebody as well? I'll try and work out to throw out old opinions of themselves, to show them what they're capable of. Throwing out old kind of terms that they've heard. Maybe they're unfit, or they're weak core, or they've got weak glutes and they keep getting injured. So just trying to reframe some of their language that they use around themselves, really. Very much conscious as well about my messages that I put out there. So on these slides here, you'll see little things that I share on the WhatsApp group and on our Facebook page about how women are more capable than people think they are. And if you've got a group of women behind you, you can achieve a lot more. It drives me on as well, keeps me stronger, makes me show up, makes me drive on, be better trainer for them, use my voice and the platform that I've been given and really kind of honoured to have. So I asked my people in the last couple of hours to just give me some opinions on our community spirit. So these are some quotes here. So finding your tribe is something that somebody has said to me as well. So being part of a family was a real key theme through some of the messages that I received today. The WhatsApp group has enabled them to keep in touch with people. And we've chatted, like I say, about other things like just the odd funny GIF, or talking about VE Day and things like that. So it's not a WhatsApp group, it's not just about the training that we do together, it's this community and these friends now that we've got with each other. And here classes made me realise I can do way more than I realised. The second one's really key about making things outside of class easier as well. So not just being physically able for 2 hours a week, but what can they do outside of the class and in their real life as well. And then this message of congratulations when I awarded someone the Player of the Month last month, she was blown away. And then when I announced it on the group, even the people that weren't in the session congratulated her as well. So, and then here, just the community spirit, and I've kind of ramming that word home, but I really feel that's key to the work that I do and keeps people coming back. As great as I'm sure my sessions are, there's so many options out there for people that they can go and do, like online for free on YouTube. They can go to the gym, but my people keep coming back to me. So that's not just me, that's the community and the friends that they've made as well. And there's some more. So this is Just Strong. I'm an ambassador for them, so I'll just get that there. But you can tell who strong women are. They're building each other up instead of tearing each other down. And that's a key thing that I try and do as well, just giving people the empowerment to support each other rather than tearing each other down. And then just some short videos here. So you can see that are well attended, and just a couple of people there who are happy to have their photo taken, and how strong they are. So what we've worked on in the last couple of months is not let those people drift away over the 3 months of lockdown, keeping them together, giving them challenges, and they're all coming back to me now that we're hopefully easing out of those lockdowns. Thank you, guys.
Thanks very much, Kate, and a big round of applause, especially as you've come on board having about 4 hours notice. So thanks very much for joining us today. In the chat, you have got loads of excellent questions. So in the interest and to stick to time, I'm going to ask Grace Blackcloth to share screen and unmute now. And Kate, you're welcome to go into the chat and try to answer some of those really good questions that you've got. Thank you again. And welcome to Grace.
Thank you, everyone. Hi, thank you for letting me come onto this today. It's wonderful. Just to let you know who I am, my name is Grace Blackcloth and I run a gymnastics club up in North Bedfordshire. We are a rural gymnastics club, so we cater for all the children that can't necessarily get into towns or can't access something like gymnastics. We ran out of a school and we had to change how we worked. We have children from age 4 to 18 years old, so we have really littlies up to school leavers. We have recreational gymnastics, so they do 1 hour a week for fun, up to national level acrobatics. So acrobatics is not your bars, beam, your floor, any equipment. We actually just use the floor and we climb on each other. We throw each other around. It's a very close contact sport. They perform routines. It's more of a show. We were open 7 days a week and we had 3 classes a day. So as soon as lockdown happened, we were in a lot of trouble. COVID-19 shut us down. In fact, we got shut down before the schools got shut down. The school that we ran out of on March the 15th rang me up and said, you're not allowed to start your classes anymore. You have to stop immediately. And that meant the end. We were actually just about to compete in a competition. So our competitive gymnasts had been training for about 4 months for their national competition. And we couldn't let them compete. We had to stop everything and we panicked. I was lucky. I have a good team behind me. I talked to my coaches. I communicated with the parents. I talked to other clubs that I had contacts with, and we decided to test an online system that we had no idea about called Zoom, which obviously everyone now knows everything about. It was tricky. We had to work through a few things. Obviously, we're working with children, and we can work with quite young children. We had to think about data protection. We had to think about the safety of the gymnasts. All our gymnasts are insured by British Gymnastics. British Gymnastics did send out guidelines of what we were allowed to do, and they allowed us to do some things at home, but we were very limited on what the kids could do. Gymnastics is a very hands-on sport. We physically support the children all the time to keep them safe, as well as using specialised equipment. We had none of that. We had to think very carefully. We also kept our sessions quite short. A lot of our gymnasts were doing 3-hour sessions. We couldn't do that. That wouldn't have worked with daily life. So we had to change all of that. We had to be very specific on where they were allowed to do their gymnastics and what equipment they had. Again, we had to think outside the box. They wouldn't have had much equipment. We had to keep safety at the top of our list. These gymnasts could could do round or flick, full twists, we had double backs, we had all kinds of things going, but we had to say to them all, you have to stop everything right now to keep yourself safe. We also, when we taught gymnastics, sometimes we demonstrated, because when you have a young child, they do watch and they do copy us a lot of the time. So for some of it, it was in my living room and I was demonstrating things. But for most of the time, to keep the gymnasts safe, I sat down with another coach in the room in the Zoom meeting with me, and we watched the gymnasts to make sure they were safe at all times. We had to be so careful. We created an online timetable. We completely scrapped all of our timings of the day. Obviously, the children were all off school, so we created our own online timetable. We talked to the parents about what they wanted to do, how they wanted to work it, and then we thought what the gymnasts could do safely. I also had coaches that were happy to coach online and some that weren't happy to coach online. So we had to balance those out. Those people often became we have to have 2 adults at all times in our gymnastics lessons. So there was one coach always on the camera watching at all times, and then another coach that would just often help out just watching other children. Because we have such high level competitive gymnasts, we had to make it a balance. We were only allowed to do 3 things. We were allowed to do physical strength, flexibility and cardio work. So for those gymnasts that are used to throwing somersaults, climbing on each other, performing routines, none of that could happen. So we had to think very carefully about a balance of what we were allowed to do and what the gymnasts would enjoy to do. We were also thinking about the timings that fitted around the gymnasts that were also going to online school. We have children that had to attend school online from 9 o'clock in the morning. And so we often ended up doing our sessions twice in a day. We started at 10 o'clock in the morning and we'd do a session for some of those children that needed the physical exercise to get up in the morning, to get them moving. And then they would go off to school and do their online learning or their schoolwork that they were sent. And then we'd see them all again at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the evening. We had to balance it all with all of these things that they were trying to fit around themselves. We changed the timetable weekly, not the times as such, but what they were doing, because we didn't want them to get bored. We were very, very aware that these children would get very bored of doing a conditioning set every single day. So we thought about things that we could do that they enjoyed. We used a lot of our dance teacher a lot of the time. She created some fantastic conditioning routines. She also taught them dance as well. And then we also started, because we were well aware that we were pulling some families and some parents into some of this, that we started family yoga. We did all kinds of things to keep these children engaged as much as we can. And we did manage to get about 80% of our competitive children online, and then about 20% of our younger children came online at different times during the lockdown. We were constantly asking for feedback from the parents. Every week I would send out an email with the timetable saying, please let me know if there's anything else. I also did a couple of private lessons for children when they couldn't attend the timetabled lessons. I said to the mums and the dads, please let me know, we can do some private sessions. We did do private sessions online that went down really well. At about June time, we were obviously allowed to do face-to-face sessions. So we started with garden lessons. We opened it up to the parents. We were very aware that gymnastics is not just about physical exercise, but for the children, it's social interaction. So we didn't say we want these 5 children at this time. We said to the parents, you choose the 5 gymnasts that you want them to work with, their friends, the people that they haven't seen. So we had all kinds of abilities in our garden lessons. We sent all kinds of different coaches out. And we started it with once a week. British Gymnastics, our insurers, were very clear that we had to build up the children back to full-time gymnastics. They couldn't just go straight in, which is, again, part of the safety and looking after them. So we started with 1 day a week. We also kept all of our Zoom lessons all of the time during this time. Then we were allowed to have groups of 15s. This posed a problem. We had nowhere to go. We didn't want to go in a public space. We have children. We can't just expect them and their parents to understand going into a park was out of the question for us. So I spent about 2 weeks talking to different people, going into looking at different gardens. We ended up actually communicating with a hotel that has a big field behind it that is completely hidden away from anybody. Nobody can look in. It's at the back of their car park. And we decided this was the perfect place to do our larger groups. We started these larger groups for our competitive children first. We didn't do any of the younger children. They still stayed on Zoom. These groups were 15s in the larger space. They bought their own mats, they bought all their own equipment. We had to temperature test. We had to sanitize constantly. We still weren't allowed anywhere near the children. They weren't allowed anywhere near each other. Bearing in mind, we are a sport that picks each other up and gets very close. None of this was happening. After a short amount of time, I think it was July 25th, we were allowed to come inside. We started indoor sessions. We weren't allowed back on our school site that we worked on, so we had to source another venue. We have managed to source another venue, and we started indoor sessions. We built these up. We were very unsure about. We had to clean all the equipment between things. We had to make sure that everyone was coming in and out safely with one-way systems and masks. We still had to temperature check. We had to sanitize at all times. And again, we are actually in a public place, so we had to make sure we had toilet facilities that were safe. We still had some outdoor sessions and we still had some Zoom sessions. But 95% of our sessions moved indoors, and this was so key for the children during the summer holidays. These children had no schoolwork to look forward to, or not look forward to, whichever way they see it, but they had no timetables. They couldn't really go on holidays. We had so many children that had nothing to do. So these indoor sessions were vital for them to keep them going, keep them on a timing. I specifically made my Sunday session at 9 o'clock in the morning to make sure that these teenagers were getting out of bed, because a lot of them had been laying into bed until 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. And I said to them, no, you must be here at 9 o'clock. Let's get you used to getting back up again. Otherwise, it's going to be a culture shock when you go back to school in September. The future for us, we are still indoors, just about. We have an 80% full timetable. The higher competitive gymnasts are not doing their full hours at the moment. They're still at least an hour shorter session because I just physically cannot fit them in. We are still not allowed back on our school site, and we are still, to this day, not doing our favourite part of gymnastics, which is acrobatics. At this time, we have been given no guidance on when we can start it. With children going back to school, we've actually ramped up our safety and our protection for the children because we are well aware that they are going to be seeing more people and we're trying to keep them as safe as possible. But for now, we are still not running at full acrobatics. We have no competitions planned. We're trying all of our best motivation practices to keep these children going, because it's so important for them just to keep them going in something that they love. And that is all I've got to say. Thank you very much. I'll welcome any questions. I've got to teach the class in about 10 minutes, but I'll hang around for a few more minutes.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Grace. I'm going to invite Rob to get ready to upload in a second. Grace, you do have some excellent questions in the chat. If you do have time to stay and answer them, that would be perfect. If you have to rush off, then we'll make sure they get to you. All right. I'd like to invite Rob Lindsay, Support Development Officer of Bedford Borough Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jen. Okay, thank you for having me. Very pleased to be here. And I work for Bedford Borough Council as a Sport Development Officer. So things have changed, like many of the other speakers for us in this year in 2020. So previously we'd be running programs out in the community. Primary focus for me would be mental health, working with people coming from inpatients or the hospital or in the community, working closely with Mind and our CAMS local providers. But we also had over 70s programs, no limits disability programs, and other sessions throughout the community. So talking today about what we managed to do online. Let's just move the slide on one. So, keeping active during the pandemic from the local authority point of view, we wanted to continue to keep people active and keep that routine. We knew the demographic of those people that we work with, there would be challenges. So getting everything online the easiest as possible, and similar to some of the other speakers, using Zoom was something that we'd thought about in the past. Like Ryan said, could we do it, and how would our sessions that we run at the library and the museum work in an online format? And would there be much resistance, especially from the older generation who we work a lot with, to doing that? But the lockdown was something that forced our hand a little bit and meant that we had to try and see what we could do. So we were very pleased to be able to get something quickly up and running as soon as lockdown happened in March, and have a period of online sessions straight away. So we've got a couple of examples there of Linda doing Tai Chi and Maz doing her chair-based dance sessions. We were able to grow the program from there. the demand for the live online sessions and the challenges of this type of delivery. So something that was always been difficult is for everybody is getting to sessions and venues, and also this new digital format. So similar to as Grace said, we work quite hard on the security element, making sure all the sessions like this Zoom conference here is the waiting room and people are being allowed in the right format, and then being able to keep that consistency and quality, so making sure the video streams were good and the sound quality was good. So that was something we worked quite hard on at the start and has maintained throughout. So being able to reach the older generation more from a technology point of view was quite key. So being on hand to make it a real smooth process. So having the right links, we have a website with links directly into the classes and people go from there straight into Zoom. So it makes it a little bit easier without having to go through different codes and passwords, which you wanted to make it really smooth for people. And in each of the sessions, you know, we're getting between 20 and 30 people from March, and we still are now as well. So we'll look at the data a little bit more in a second. So in terms of participation in the program, it was 21 weeks when we put this together, this graphic, and we can see that it's up to 17 sessions a week. And from this week, we've just launched a new element to the program in care homes, so it's now up to 19 sessions a week. So that's over 7,618 attendances there, and I think now since this has been made, we're up to 8,000 attendances. For example, yesterday we had 5 different sessions on throughout the day, which is ranging from yoga, meditation, chair dance, a specific children's session based with CAMS, and also we have a coffee and wellbeing group, because as we've mentioned throughout lockdown, that social element was really, really key, and a lot of the activity sessions that we do in the local authority centres are for people's social routine. And I know from my point of view in mindful sport, with mental health, it's really important to keep that schedule and that routine for people. So we wanted to do that, so we still have mindful yoga on a Wednesday at 1 p.m, which we've had the past 4 years in the library. So people are still coming along, and the same group gets to see each other, which is quite nice. The learnings from that is, as you can see there, the different sessions that we have on throughout the week now on a weekly basis. There's a session every day at 9:30, gentle exercise with Jane, and then there's different things at different times. We've got an evening yoga tonight, which is more flow-based yoga, and then we've got the different groups there. So as I said, the attendance is now up over 8,000. So we can see that there is a demand for it. And if it's been able to be done in an easy way, I think people will still maintain that interaction. And I think as we move forward, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the balance between now coming back to having physical sessions, but maintaining an online option for those people who can't necessarily get to the venues. We always want to make things as affordable as possible and remove any barriers to participation. So it's a good option to keep. And as I said, moving forward, a consistent uptake and desire for the sessions, and we still have 30 people on a daily basis on the gentle exercise. Last Monday, having 75 attendances for Tai Chi, gentle exercise and yoga, and 22 live sessions a week. The flyer on the right hand side there is just a new program that's just been launched into care homes to support those guys there who are quite isolated, and particularly a really, really difficult time for our care homes. So we wanted to be able to support them with a free program of Zoom sessions, and the care staff have been able to load that Zoom up onto the TV, and we can provide a chair-based safe exercise class. Tomorrow we've got a cycling one with videos as well. So it's been nice to embed that learning into our care homes that we learned from the adult program online. As I said, the CAMS specific program for young people, a more closed session where we're taking the referrals from the children's mental health team. So we have a closed group which has got a yoga session and then a chat afterwards, so it keeps that social interaction. And I think that the point of view of those young people and the feedback that we've had is it's quite nice to be able to be on Zoom and turn your camera off and do yoga, where you might feel quite self-conscious going to a sports centre or a group and talking and joining in. So I think the positive things that we've learned from being able to do things like this on Zoom is that people do find it's a different option. It's not a replacement, because hopefully we're going to get back to having those physical sessions, but it is a different option. So we've got that wider coverage and more opportunities for people, which we're really pleased to have now, and collaborating with partners such as our mental health teams and the university who support us with underpinning it with research. So we're using SurveyMonkey at the moment to get feedback in a remote way from people as well, and trying to find out how the care homes respond and who's taking part. So we can really support what we're doing with a little bit of research. We've got a level 2 mental health first aid course, which is also running online, coming up in October. So people can sign up to that if anyone on today is interested in doing that. They work in the sports sector, they'd like to do a course. We've got some options to do that as well. So a few contact details from me and the different sites there. Bedford Sport Live is where you can find all the free daily sessions for online activities. The Engaged Sport Live is for the care home program specifically, and Cam Space is for the young people. But all the information is on the Borough Physical Health and Mental Health website, and my contacts are there if anyone's got further questions for me and would like to get in touch. I think that's all from me. So, unless there's any questions.
Thanks so much,
Thanks,
Bob.
Sharon.
Yes, you do have some questions in the chat. In the interest of keeping us to time, what I will do is invite you to go into the chat to answer those if you can. That would be excellent. Big round of applause again. So far, I think we've seen a variety of practitioners in different fields, but what's been great is seeing the similarities in how they have kept relationships and sense of belonging going. Okay, I am going to go into a short break now. We're going to have a 5-minute break, which takes us to 3 minutes past 5. Quick comfort break, stand up and stretch, and we will be back very soon. All right, we will begin again, and it's actually me up next. So I'm going to be presenting a short overview of some research and a proposal to take part in some research that I'm doing. My presentation is on the importance of home for girls' physical activity. So girls have been labelled at risk because of lower physical activity engagement, when in fact their engagement is often just different from the norm. Typical physical education and physical activity spaces can leave girls vulnerable to surveillance, often in contradictory ways. Girls have been considered mannish for taking part, but also their femininity is scrutinised and they might be found not feminine enough. The public gaze works to discipline and control the body to particular dominant ideas of gender. And the underrepresentation of women in public sports sites is not surprising, especially when girls learn to gaze upon and regulate their own moving bodies in both women-only and mixed physical activity spaces. So this situation led to research between 2009 and 2013 on girls' physical activity in space, where it was found that home was a crucial space for girls to take part. As girls feel that their bodies are not under surveillance and they have more control over their bodies in familiar spaces, home can become a site where they can try out and assert different identities more safely. The research was carried out using visual methods, where girls were invited to take photos of places that they are active. Let's have a look at some of the photos. Here we can see Ajit has created a photograph at home on the treadmill. She says, we have a treadmill and my mate comes over. It's not like going out to do sport, we're just staying home and doing it. It's not like a game and there's nothing to be competitive about. I probably wouldn't go out to the park and play football. Priya here tells us, I like doing yoga at home, and she says that this photo is taken at home in her bedroom. I don't like to do it in groups because when I'm doing this in front of other people, I get really embarrassed and I get self-conscious of what I'm doing, she says, because they're watching you and obviously they're going to talk about you and how you do the moves and how you don't do the moves. Whereas when I play football, I'm part of a team, so I don't mind if other people are watching because I'm that team. When I'm doing yoga, it's just me. So we can see that using home for physical activity challenges and reconstructs such traditionally intimate domestic spaces as protected spaces for solitary exercise, such as yoga. In this case, Priya feels in control of her body by practicing yoga in the privacy of her bedroom, a place hidden from the public gaze. And in the absence of the public eye, home represents a place of belonging where a girl can safely engage in the micro practices of physical culture. To be clear, we're not saying that home is the only space that girls are safe to take part in physical activity. And indeed, our research indicated that other spaces could feel like home or be homely, as Anjana says here about the school netball centre. But we're talking about places where girls feel comfortable and have control over who they are active with. Now, more recent research has indicated that homely places are still crucial. So the work of Annette Stride, and girls continue to be objectified in school or community physical activity spaces, as demonstrated by Risto Martina et al. So my research purpose today is to propose a new project working with teachers and other physical educators. So I'm putting together a research project, a collaborative project with physical educators interested in researching with their learners or athletes about the importance of home during the pandemic. Particularly, we might research the meanings that home has for girls doing physical activity during lockdown and beyond. Have they been more active than usual? What sort of meanings did they develop for their bodies and their physical activity engagement during this time? And how can we support girls to be more active as we continue to deal with the pandemic? If you would be interested in taking part in this research, please do email me at the address that you can see here on this screen. Thank you for everybody listening, and I'd like to thank the participants of the Geographies of the Body project, the girls taking part, and for sharing their photos that I've used today. All right, I'm gonna have a look at the chat photos during the next presentation. I need to switch share screen. Our next presentation is by Lauren Corke. Lauren is a teacher and she is not able to be present with us this afternoon because she is doing after school clubs. It's the first week back for her. So I'm going to share a recorded presentation that she made for us. Just bear with me one moment while I upload that.
Hi, I'm Lauren Corke, providing a talk on PE during and beyond lockdown and the impact this could have had on learning. As a department, we actually hoped to get the coursework completed, at least the first draft before summer, and obviously COVID happened, so this is no longer the case. And as it's shown, many students haven't even completed their weaknesses. So at the start of lockdown, we had lots of people in pink, still not everyone, and now all of a sudden, mid to late lockdown.
Okay, I think it's come to my attention that there is a little bit of a technical problem with the sound on that. My apologies, I couldn't see your chat while the video was playing. I'm going to come out of there. Okay, I'm going to invite our next speaker, Dawn Mallett, to share screen and unmute. Thanks, Dawn.
Hi, can you hear?
Yes, thank you, Dawn.
Brilliant, thank you. Firstly, before I begin, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Hill for inviting me. It's a real honour. I am currently studying at Bedford Uni, just completed my first year of part-time MA in sports pedagogy and PE, which has been a great experience for myself. I thought before I go through the practice in which we've implemented in the school, I'd give a little bit of background about the school, and then hopefully it will help understand why we're bringing in what we're bringing in. We are 2 schools based in Milton Keynes in Bucks, and between the 2 schools we've got approximately 300 pupils aged 3 to 11. The location in which both schools are situated, last year were ranked 2nd in the most deprived, so we've got an awful lot of children, and as you can see, on average 48% on pupil premium. Our team across both schools is 5 members of staff, not including myself, all of which have a different level of experience and qualifications. And the idea of the presentation today is to kind of give a little bit of insight of what we're trying to bring into the school moving into the post-COVID phase. Everything that I share is purely trial and error. We obviously have tried to plan for what's probably going to be one of the most difficult times moving into an academic year. So there'll be quite a few things that I'll be able to explain, not be able to tell you the impact just yet. So this is a quote that I saw on social media during lockdown, and since then everything that I've approached moving into my role this year has seen as an opportunity for PE and physical activity as a whole, but very much with the children that we have here. In terms of our whole school approach, you often hear the phrase, a whole school approach. What I'm really fortunate to have is a position where our executive head teacher has brought in my role new September last year, that is purely focusing on the quality of PESPA within our schools. So I've had the opportunity to have a committed partnership with the pupils, the parents, members of SLT, and also governors. So we've built this really good collaborative approach, if you like, where everything that we're now putting in place, all members of the community are involved. In terms of this quote, it made me sit down and reflect an awful lot in terms of where we're finding ourselves. And it was very evident that there was only so much we could think about. And when the team got together during lockdown, we ended up analysing pretty much all of our curriculum and all the provision that we're offering. Obviously, the first thing in question was whether our curriculum that we've put in place in previous years was working anyway. Would it work if we're moving into post-COVID? What we offer, does it provide children with all the opportunities to achieve all 4 aims of the curriculum, and whether our assessment tool was valid, purposeful, and used effectively? And although that the Youth Sport Trust research revealed quite a lot of restrictions, I saw this as an opportunity to rebrand into this new normal, and has opened an opportunity for us to rethink about how we approach our PE and physical activity provision. And I'm hoping that other practitioners in this position have also taken advantage of this opportunity too. So in terms of the reshaping, so these are the kind of things that we've tried looking at in terms of bringing in. So at both schools, we've timetabled a compulsory physical activity hour into each year group. So as it stands, all children will have the 2 hours of PE, but additionally an additional hour that's dedicated purely for physical activity. Now, for us, this is going to be an opportunity to utilise time to encourage children to adopt this physical lifestyle, for them to work on any fundamental movement skills that they may have missed because of COVID, whether that's physical literacy, the motor skills and things like that, but also for the kids to enjoy it without the pressure, and they can obviously engage in physical activity in whichever form that they wish. As part of the restorative approach, so we've also looked at trying to bring in this whole approach of encouraging physical activity. We've also added in 30 minutes of a structured physical activity at break. So although the children are given their lunch break, we've got spaces around the facility where we're encouraging the children to engage in more structured sessions. It's not compulsory this time, unlike the hour that we've added in. This is purely for the children who may have missed working with others to then join in with this structured session. It's led by our PE staff. Today was the trial day for me for that, and we focus on raising the heart rate, which was quite good because it educated the children in things that maybe they've not had the opportunity to do so. So that's something that we're definitely going to be incorporating regularly from today onwards. As part of our curriculum during autumn 1, we are going to be delivering 14 weeks. Obviously, we're now going into, well, soon we're going into week 2. We're going to have 14 weeks of both age appropriate and restorative content. So ideally 50% of our weekly PE lessons that the children will engage with will be an increased focus on health and skill-related exercise, whether that's the agility, balance, coordination, and 50% of that will be purely based on their age expected. So at the moment we're delivering 1 hour a week that is all about almost recapping and for the children to continuously practice with those basic skills, and then 50% is what they would be getting taught anyway based on their age. In terms of the increased cross-curriculum, as a school we are also reshaping our links. Again, I'm sure we will understand that PE and physical activity fits in with quite a lot of subjects, whether that's science or PSHE. But again, I'm in a really fortunate position where our executive head teacher has said, do you know what, if there's an opportunity to use PE and physical activity as a vehicle to help these children, then we'll do it. So there'll be a slide later on where I give you an example of how we've incorporated PE and physical activity more inside our PSHE curriculum. Our assessment has also changed slightly. So originally we were looking at quite a few statements that were weekly assessments. It was unrealistic and we weren't able to monitor the progress. So with post-COVID, it's been a real opportunity to pull back the assessment and have a look at how effective it is. And we have adopted the concept of head, heart, hands, which I absolutely love. I think it's great. And we spent a lot of time over lockdown trying to ensure that all the domains are being looked at, and if the children are able to achieve in other areas, then that's what we'll utilise. That again has already been practiced today, and the children have left some of the lessons. Yes, they may not be physically competent, but they have achieved somewhere else in their lesson. We don't believe that judging children based on their physical ability is the way forward. I know that previous speakers have also mentioned that, which is great. But in terms of moving forward, we're going to try and prevent the bad experiences. In terms of regular insets, unlike quite a few schools that I've been exposed to, we are now given the opportunity to do regular insets. So far, I've delivered 3 or 4 since the back end of Christmas. So that's been great. And all the staff are kind of understanding that we need to raise the profile of PESPA across the school, including themselves. In terms of the biggest change for us, which is our physical activity, so the additional hour, we are very heavily focusing on the 5 key indicators, specifically 1 and 2. And we have spent money. Now, I know a lot of schools will spend money on replenishing equipment, CPD, and our school clubs, but what we're going to do is commit to a large sum of money, ensuring that we can actually monitor the physical activity and the impact. So in the last 4 years, I've been able to have access to a lot of the sports premium expenditure, and it's very rare that I see a big sum of money that's been spent on a way of assessing the UK Chief Medical recommended daily activity. So what we're aiming to do is incorporate this into the daily life of our children. We are starting this next week, so the children will be given a wristband, and that will be monitored and assessed by myself and the team to ensure that what we are doing is effective and that the children are meeting what's expected for them. In terms of the PSHE that I previously mentioned, we as a school always had physical activity embedded into our cross-curriculum. However, there was opportunity and scope for more. So now what we've done, instead of the odd 1 or 2 lessons across the year, we've been fortunate enough to be able to timetable in a strand into every half term. So we're going to try and use sport and physical activity as a vehicle to try and understand and educate the children's perceptions of health. And we've got 6 strands there where we've tried to embed the links in really clearly, so the children will have access to those lessons each half term, in the hope that at the end of it, they can kind of develop that understanding. In terms of what we're also trying to implement, this is our PIP program. So we've identified its PESPA improvement program. This is something that we're going to try this year, where it's great that we're introducing all these new things, but actually we don't know whether it's going to work for every child. We don't know how every single child has come back. Even in day 4 now, the diverse needs from the children before lockdown was already quite diverse. Now we're looking at post-COVID and the impact of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold Pip Clinics, and this will be where the children will get pulled out for different reasons, whether that's that they've missed lessons, whether they need that restorative approach and they've missed quite a lot of lessons and you can see it evidently in their lessons, or whether it's to support gifted and talented to try and continue to push the sporting ability. So in terms, I know there's quite a lot of things I've explained. But in terms of where we're going with this, we want to reinforce the value of active, healthy lifestyles, and we're going to do that in every opportunity that we've got. We know as a school, particularly with the children that we've got on the cohorts bringing every year, that they are unable to master all those fundamental movement skills. And this is a prime example for us to obviously move forward with that. Opportunity for us to revise, we've done that, probably the best thing that we've done. But in terms of recover, obviously spoken a lot about the reshaping, rethinking, but the recover, we don't know whether it's going to work. So I'm hoping as part of my research moving into next year, that we can have a look at this and see the impact of the restorative approach and if it's had a positive impact on all of our children. I appreciate that I've had to speed that through, but hopefully I've highlighted the main key points for you. That's it. Thanks, Joanne.
Thank you very much, Dawn, and a big round of applause from us. There are some questions for you in the chat. If you'd like to move over there, that would be brilliant. So I would like to invite our next speaker up. Do we have Rihanna Price ready to unmute and start video?
Yes, I'm ready.
Excellent. Okay. Thanks again to Dawn, and we now pass over to Rihanna Price. Thank you.
It's just saying that I'm host disabled attendees screen sharing.
Sorry, Rihanna. Yeah, give me a moment. I'll sort that out for you. Okay, Rihanna, you should be able to share screen now.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect.
Hello, guys. My name is Rihanna. It's really nice to be here today. I want to say a big thank you to be able to do this challenge in a sense, because I haven't done it before. So I want to say a big thank you for allowing me to do this. So just a bit of your time. I'm going to be speaking into as an MA student who I've just finished, and this is the thesis that I did. I looked into an examination of the recontextualization of national sports policy when implemented into practice, a case study of Sport England's This Girl Can. And I had amazing supervisors, which I'll talk about later. So in terms of the introduction, I looked into the literature to try and kind of come to terms with what it is that I'm looking at. And I'd realized that female participation in sport has been a catalyst of a varied amount of interventions for a very long time. But then I started to think about, if it's been a catalyst for a various amount of interventions, then why do we still have this problem? And then as I was looking at Sport in Future, the new government policy, I'd realized that they were focusing on underrepresented groups, which women also came into, and they also Sport England's response to this, to trying to increase women's participation in sport, was This Girl Can. And This Girl Can was focusing on encouraging women to get into sport, not even just sport, but also physical activity. They based their objectives on something the behavior change model called the transferential model, in which was based on their insight that they had accumulated together that could they perceived to be able to encourage women to be participating in sport more. However, the literature started to show me that there was an implementation gap, which meaning that what was happening when being created in the policies was not being reflected on the ground. So you started to realize there was a gap between the two. So I thought, how do we look at a theoretical lens to try and figure out why this is happening? And Bernstein was perfect at this, because he started to say that it allowed me to create a framework to analyze how intended outcomes were not being implemented in practice. Was knowledge being produced and reproduced? We look at sport organizations as policy attaining organizations, as in they've taken on a policy from the government and created tangible outcomes, or what we perceive to be tangible outcomes. But how come that doesn't get translated in practice? So local delivery was definitely going to be the most important thing to look at, because they were, in a sense, taking This Girl Can and putting it into the programs on the local level, and also having the connection with those participants on the local level. But the government had already said that it was hard to get the national organizations and the local those on the ground to work together. Now, that was the most interesting part. Let me show you why. Now, it kind of informed my methodology, because my methodology kind of showed me now that I needed to do a qualitative research instead of a quantitative research, which is what they were kind of doing in terms of statistical analysis, so that I could really look at sports providers' perspectives on what was going on the ground. I really wanted to hear what they felt like. So I initially started off with an interview with a representative from Sport England to see what their ideal perspective of this girl Cam was. What did they intend to do? I ended up doing a semi-structured interviews with 7 amount of participants, and also people who were sports providers and sport development officers, as you can see in the picture. Now, whilst doing the methodology, I used content and thematic analysis, which allowed me to really immerse myself in the data. And in immersing myself in the data, there were 5 core themes that began to really emerge and really show itself to be some of the considerations that I can use to support the translation of This Girl Can policy into the local level. So the first one was the local insight and feedback loop. This was really interesting. As participants, you could see the frustration for them not being able to show Sport England and even the government what it is that they were doing already on the local level. They started to say things like Sport England was slow to react, which starts to show that they were already doing it, and Sport England has brought in something now which they were already doing before, but there was no feedback loop for them to be able to feedback what it is that they were doing. You can see that Rachel said there was people out there already doing the job already. It's not just us taking over, it's about us complementing what was already there. So understanding that they wasn't getting the local insight, in a sense, just having a top-down view instead of a bottom-up view. Overcoming gender equality, we know that gender inequality has definitely been a prominent view, as said at the beginning, and the literature really shows it. But participants were also saying that they were saying things like men rule sport, and it has been seen through history that men has been ruling sport. So why is it that this is the same narrative that we have now, and how can we change it? So overcoming gender inequality was a big issue, not just in participation, but also in the work instances and the effects that it's having on women's participation in sport. Branding not being enough was a massive one as well. The idea that This Girl Can, building this branding, was an amazing thing, and it was a different method that they used, but it wasn't enough because there was nothing that was placed on the ground in terms of the programs. You can see that it was saying, Luke says it's a brilliant campaign, but there was nothing that was built on the ground in terms of programs. That people are saying they don't think that people really understood what This Girl Can was, and whether it was just an umbrella or they didn't really they couldn't really grasp what This Girl Can was. So the branding wasn't enough. There needed to be more of a follow through on the ground. Understanding behavior change, the literature began to show that it was really important for the participants, for the deliverers to understand behavior change in order to be able to facilitate it. But as you can see, the transferential model came under a lot of criticism within the sector, as people were seeing that it wasn't evidence-based, so they were not able to use it within their environment or on the ground where they were. It was because they didn't understand it. So understanding behavior change was another one. The last one was engaging in academia, making sure that the policies are evidence-based, not just insight, but evidence-based from practitioners and academics. Now, this leads me to the discussion and the conclusion, and you realize that participants were already saying that Sport England was slow to react, as they were already doing some of the things that they were being asked to do previous, but there was no feedback loop which enables those on the ground to be able to express what it is they're doing. This shows that also that when as the transferential model came under scrutiny by other practitioners and those on the ground, it shows that we need to engage academics and engage engage those on the ground. But you could already see that this was a problem from before, as the government were already saying that it was hard to get national organizations to work with local, those on the local level, which already shows this disconnect, which could be contributing to this implementation gap, as well as looking through the framework of Bernstein and realizing that information now is being produced and reproduced based on the insight that people have, whether they were on the national level and whether they were on the local level. So it was important for people to be trained in the behavior change model to be able to facilitate it on the local level. And make sure that that's how it ended up emerging with the combi model, that participants on the local level were using a different behavior change model. This already is showing that information was being reproduced in order to be able to deal with the environment they were in, showing that one size cannot fit all. So we need to make sure co-creation with all stakeholders should be promoted. There's something that really stuck out to me. It says, do it with us, not to us, which means that they want to be a part of this policy to implementation process, and they need to be a part of that process, so that the ideal perspective that is held by this girl can match up with the real perspective in terms of the time and resources that they have to be able to do that. Further research is definitely needed to address gender inequality, because it is definitely a prominent thing, and also looking at some of the dominant assumptions, and even just putting on the framework of Bernstein again, looking at the dominant assumptions that people have about females in sport, so that we can spread the awareness of, do we only challenge the behavior of women, or do we also challenge the behavior of men and society as a whole? Thank you so much for listening. I want to say a big thank you to the participants that made this possible, and a big thank you to my supervisors that made this possible, Dr. Joanne, and also Professor Angel. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks very much, Rihanna. Big round of applause to you. Rihanna had her graduation on Saturday for her MA by Research. So congratulations, Rihanna, for completing that excellent achievement there. Okay, so we have Dr. Michelle Flemmins up next with her presentation. Thank you for sharing your screen, Michelle. I think you're on mute, Michelle.
Am I now? Can you see me now?
Now we can see you. Now you're in and we can hear
Hello,
you.
everyone.
Excellent.
Sorry, that was me messing about with the buttons and then everything disappeared. Okay, thank you so much for the wonderful presentation so far. That's a really hard act to follow. My name is Michelle Flemmins, and I am presenting on what I've put forward for a postdoctoral study moving forwards. So what I want to look at is, are physical education teachers equipped to support mental health and recovery post-COVID-19? Now today I'll be looking, the objectives I'll be focusing on are outlining the problem, creating some sort of rationale for the project, giving the theoretical framework some thought, the methods, the potential outcomes, and also the possible partners. And it's not moving on. Sorry, what have I done now? Do you know, this is because I've been sat. I'm sorry. Hang on. Oh, there we go. Lovely. Sorry about that, peeps. Okay, so in terms of outlining the problem, the pandemic has contributed to the social, health, and educational inequalities in society. And it's done it again. Sorry. Why is it not doing that? It's just blocking. Sorry. Oh, it went so well earlier. Okay, bear with me. Let me try again. Sorry. Oh, and this is recording as well. Okay, so I've just walked into a nightmare.
Don't worry, Michelle, take your time.
I don't know what to do. It's all gone wrong. Okay, exit full screen, speaker view. Okay, it's got you. Share screen. Where's my share screen? There we go. See if that will redo it now.
Excellent, we're back in.
Is that in now? Yeah, that's working now. Sorry. Okay, so the pandemic has contributed to social, health, and educational inequalities in society. The disadvantaged and vulnerable to poor health are particularly at risk. So therefore, the education attainment gap has increased by 36% during lockdown. which isn't great. So there are growing concerns over young people's mental health, the academic pressures they face, and the association with school-related stress and health. So effectively, this was before lockdown. So during lockdown and post-COVID, this is even more of an issue. Now, we know that the benefits that physical activity has on psychological well-being, that there is a need for school-based interventions with physical activity focus, and therefore a promotion of physical literacy and health literacy within our physical education curriculum can contribute quite nicely towards this. Now, why is this so important? What is the rationale behind what I want to do? Now, what we know is that there is 10 to 20% of adolescents who experience mental health conditions. Additionally, 1 in 7 of 11 to 16-year-olds had at least one mental health disorder, with emotional disorders being most common in the older groups. There is also something called ACEs, and that's adverse childhood experiences. And these are a contributory factor to life chances in the future. So therefore, things like verbal, physical, and sexual abuse towards children have increased during lockdown. And if you can see in the corner there, that's the Times and Citizen that literally came through my door today, and that we're braced for more children going into the care system. So this is a real issue right now. Parental separation, domestic abuse within the family home, mental illness, alcohol abuse, drug use, and incarceration also contribute and make up these adverse childhood experiences that impact on lifelong chances. So in terms of those ACEs, increasing the individual risks of developing health harming behaviours in the long term, which is why it's so important that we have to try and sort things out and try and get children in a place where they have really good coping strategies. So with ACEs, they're 2 times more likely to binge drink or have a poor diet, 3 times more likely to be a current smoker, 4 times more likely to have sex under the age of 16 and to have smoked cannabis, which can also then lead to unintended teenage pregnancies, and then 8 times more likely to have been a victim of violence in the last year or ever been incarcerated. Additionally, they are 10 times more likely to have been the perpetrator of violence in the last year. So basically, there's a lot of research around physical activity and mental health. However, in terms of physical education and mental health, bearing in mind that most children will access their physical activity through physical education initially in school, and particularly those that don't necessarily have opportunity to access it elsewhere, there is limited research in this, which is why it's of interest to me particularly. So again, knowing those benefits that physical activity has on the psychological well-being, we do need to make sure that we have school-based interventions with physical activity focus. So it means looking at that curriculum as a whole. Now, what I want to question is that are PE teachers equipped to support children's mental health and well-being in a post-COVID era? Additionally, is it even their responsibility? So there's two sort of pronged way of looking at this. Now, in terms of the theoretical framework, I want to be able to use occupational socialisation. And this is made up of 3 phases. This is because we are looking at how well those teachers feel in terms of how well they are equipped to look after children's mental health. So between birth and their teacher training, that's the anticipatory phase. This has the biggest impact on what they do when they walk into a classroom as a teacher. The professional phase, which is when they're at university, has very, very limited amount of impact. And then when they go into the organisational phase, usually new ideas from the professional phase will very quickly get washed out. So we need to make sure that they are equipped fully so that when they walk into the profession, they are not just taking on the traditional habitus and the traditional ideas. Now, the subjective warrant is also another important factor here. It consists of each person's perceptions of the requirements for teacher education and for actual teaching in schools. Now, Lorty suggested that teachers they came into teaching because they love working with children, they have a love of sport, and they have really good interpersonal skills. Now, that's all fine and well, but that was towards working with so-called healthy children. So the things that we can't see are mental health. It's not something that's visible straight away. So therefore, they are dealing with something that they might not necessarily be ready for, and they can have a bit of a reality shock. So the subjective warrant has a direct relationship with the concept of beliefs related to perceptions of how PE should actually be delivered. These beliefs are important because they act as filters to new ideas in teaching and physical activity habits in children leading into adulthood. So if they believe that actually games was the best thing ever in PE, they are more likely to deliver a games-based curriculum as opposed to looking at other avenues or other ways to deliver physical education. So in order to kind of look at doing this study, I would use a mixed methods approach informed by the interpretive paradigm, and I would use life story semi-structured interviews. Now, I want to look at teachers' preparedness and understanding of mental health support through trauma-informed teaching pedagogies. This is something that's an idea that's being thrown around quite a bit, and it's looking at how we can use trauma-informed teaching and embedding it within pedagogical practice so that all children are being reached rather than marginalised. Well, I want to analyse the thematic using thematic analysis with those teachers at different career points, and I want to use Bourdieu's habitus, field and practice as a thinking tool in order to look at that. Now, I want to utilise the existing beliefs around the benefits of physical activity and physical education to develop interventions and also CPD for changes in practice, policy and curriculum. Teachers need to be invested in what they're doing. So if we are assimilating new beliefs, and accommodating new beliefs, that's got to be a better option than actually saying what you know and what you do doesn't count. Actually, you need to do something completely different, because in terms of sustainable change, that just won't work. So we also need to be able to assess student health and well-being, and by using physical literacy, which is the motivation, confidence and physical competence to value and lead a physically active life, and use that in terms of health literacy so that children know how to tap into physical activity to make themselves feel good. Globalwellnesstracking.com is something that I've also been looking at for that. And I want to be able to signpost physical activity programs and counselling for children so that effectively teachers know where to send children should they need further help. Now, the research pipeline and outcomes, obviously this is all very sort of new. Previously, my thesis was around occupational socialisation and the subjective warrant of physical education teachers. And I wanted to use a lot of the ideas from that to embed within this new project. Additionally, I'm an advocate of promoting positive mental health following my own diagnosis of complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I know very, very well that actually when you are really well looked after and you're looking at it from more of a post-traumatic growth position with positive psychology as opposed to looking at it as just resilience, the outcomes can be so much stronger. I'm writing my application at the moment, and in terms of outcomes, I want to have better awareness of need in schools, better prepared teachers, improved mental health of children and young people, development of national curriculum for PE and changes in the policy surrounding bereavement and separation policies in school. And additionally, with that national curriculum for PE, wellbeing is actually not the biggest part, and maybe there needs to be a bit of a shift there. Potential partners would be CHUMS, which is a mental health and emotional wellbeing service for children, the Association for Physical Education in terms of dissemination, and active partnerships and sports partnerships, again, looking at that CPD and interventions to really support teachers in terms of delivering for positive mental health, and also the global wellness tracking for looking at that as a form of assessment. So I managed to get to the end of that. Thank you. And thank you for listening. I'm really sorry about the IT issue right there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Big round of applause to you. All right, I'm going to pass over to our last speakers now. We've got Saul Keyworth and Danny Golding. Excellent, we're all ready to go. Thank you.
Welcome everybody, and well done for enduring through to the final presentation, and thank you for sticking around. We're going to do a brief soundbite in our full DJ set, and if you see me do this isn't some sort of disco fantasy of mine. It's just an indication for Saul to change the slide to the next slide. So with that, I think Saul might change us onto the slide. What we're hoping to cover is a range of things built around the theme of using metaphor, or the metaphor as DJ, for curriculum development. And we're currently writing a chapter for Professor Wearmouth's book on engaging curriculums. And we're drawing upon our previous work, which has looked at obscured practices, specifically OAA and dance, looking at the work of John Dewey and Rudolf Laban. And we've started to use metaphors, which are powerful cognitive linguistic tools for enhancing learning, developing understanding. And pioneers such as John Dewey used the metaphor growth, and reflective practitioners use metaphors in their practice of reviewing. And any of you that are into acceptance and commitment therapy will recognize that metaphors can also be powerful therapeutic tools that you can use as well. So we were going to start with some music. Sorry to disappoint you, but the technology didn't work in the end. And we were going to highlight the music of Marlena Shaw. And if you're into rare groove, you'll probably be familiar with Woman of the Ghetto, produced in 1974, using the harmonies of gospel and converting it into a jazz funk genre for the Montreux Festival in 1974. Check it out on YouTube. It's a fantastic listen. And the reason we were using this is that it's been sampled an awful lot by DJs and turntablists. And we were going to feature JFB's most recent 2020 version, which is Remember Me. And that's a segue into our ideas that in order to move forward, we should move back. So some of the problems facing physical education have already been highlighted. And having spent a 30-year career in PE, the existential crisis that we face is nothing new. But there are some real challenges and some real threats to the profession. And we're advocating some changes in order to meet the current challenges. We draw upon David Kirk's work of 2010, a decade ago, who predicted that there were a number of possible avenues that we might pursue as a sector and as a profession. Perhaps we'll be delivering more of the same. Perhaps we face extinction, or perhaps there's a need for radical reform. And he noted that perhaps we need to be historically conversant, a theme we'll return to later. And we also need to embrace some of the obscured practices such as dance and OAA. Some of the solutions offered, we know that over the last decade, models-based practice has been a popular pedagogy that has developed. But for us, we recognize some of the shortcomings. And we had some difficulties with ideas such as non-negotiable, prescriptive, and the ownership of content. And we're pleased to see that the Youth Sport Trust 2018 come up with some perhaps slightly more innovative curriculums. And reaching out to Dawn Mallet, if she's still in the room, you're a DJ. She's doing it with her current views and ideas of taking PE forward. So thanks, Dawn.
Okay, the changing room that you can see there is an art installation by Nathan Vincent, who's a New York-based crochet artist. I use this image quite a lot in my teaching to deploy Foucault's idea of making the familiar strange and the strange familiar. So what of changing rooms? Up and down the country today, PE teachers will be asking their pupils to hurry along with their changing and ensure it's appropriate for the lesson at hand. Research concerning developments in PE would suggest many teachers need to heed their own call. Despite 30 plus years of pro-feminist, post-structural, critical race, and more latterly queer theory, among many others, there appears to be more continuity rather than change. In his historical and futuristic musings, Kirk highlights how sport as techniques has come to dominate much contemporary practice, and that this isn't beyond critique. Julie Meyerson's book being one example there, when she actually states, "I'm not a games person." With games often holding centre stage, activities such as dance and OAA can become marginal and at the mercy of misuse or non-use. The picture on the far right is of the American aerial dance company Diluted. For the past several years, Danny and I have been fusing dance, jitterbug, OAA, climbing, alongside our interests in sociology and psychology, and that is to enact a pedagogy of discomfort. We do so as a means to hopefully sensitise trainees towards the objection and othering of both pupils and staff. Following Laban, this highlights the pitfalls of offering what he called lopsided programmes that can restrict and thwart a greater degree and range of movement pleasures. In concert with much research and policy, we need to offer programmes that are rich in breadth and balance, both across and within activities, and that employ a full scale of movement potentialities. Over the years, Danny and I have heard students protest and resist dance and OAA. I'm not a dancer, I don't do the outdoors, and paying homage to the late Ken Robinson, that they struggle getting their creative juices flowing. In line with both experiential and Freirean pedagogy, we desire, like McLaren and Giroux, alongside others, to open the door to a world of possibilities alongside sensitivity and care. Oh, sorry. Okay, I was going to show a slide there. On the left, that is Can Do Co Dance Company. Like Maud Hutchinson, I want to air my pedagogic relationship with Victoria Marks' Outside In, which was performed by Can Do Co in 1994. As Hutchinson notes, this challenges the viewer to see dance and dancers in a different way. It's an integrated dance company, to create an imaginative world where anything is possible. Thinking and moving, or as Green would say, living, can create a sense of wide awakeness to how bodies and selves are socially and culturally materialised, rendered with value, and made in Butler's terms intelligible, or otherwise. As for the DJ, the dance teacher selects samples. So this would have been a 40-second clip, which would have been a sample that I'd use in my teaching. And then you remix that in an edutaining way. The scene here highlights the need for teachers to move beyond superficial reflections to embrace that which is deep, critical and moving. The end of the slide is a dancer going to a mirror, first of all looking at their reflection, but then they actually lean forward where their whole torso submerges into the mirror. To return to Kirk, he asks what practices have disappeared and or been diluted. We seek to embrace the historical richness and contemporary vibrancy of both John Dewey and Rudolph Laban. As for vinyl, these are oldies but goodies and worthy of our care and consideration. Engaging with theories such as theirs can enable productive pedagogies where teachers are in a heightened sense of notice ability, where they can deliver and engage with clarity and articulation.
In terms of teacher education and teacher development, we need to change some aspects of the music that we're listening to. And by using the DJ metaphor, we've tried to explore a range of competencies, skills, and ideas that PE teachers possibly should be embracing to ensure that they have a coherent and authentic voice that maintains their position within this school curriculum. And fundamentally, what we're arguing through these competencies is that PE teachers have a responsibility to manage this to some degree, and that they are the agents of change, both within their curriculum, but also within their own practice. And we hope that we can perhaps get them to explore what it means to be innovative through their connoisseurship and mastery of their own subject matter, so that they can use a term that we've borrowed from Sparks and Smith in their pluralistic research, to become bricoleurs or crafters of the curriculum that are broad, eclectic, meaningful, and authentic.
The metaphor of the teacher as a DJ has found a natural home in music education, and we would argue that this can usefully six-step its way over to physical education, where engaging and socially just practices are the playlist of the day. Once considered peripheral in both music and dance education, turntablism and hip-hop dance, or hip-hop inspired dance, have recently found their way into the GCSE examination syllabi. On the right on the screen is Emancipation of Expressionism by Boy Blue, and at the top is a turntable concerto, which was part of the proms and performed by DJ Switch and the National Youth Orchestra. The company you can see there is C2C. C2C are a group of French turntablists, and through their work we can see that there are various ways to shape your set, and again different ways teachers would go about teaching their material, the pacing of the lesson. For a DJ you can do up, up and away, the roller coaster, the workout, riding the waves. The decks that you see there, I think that they could represent gender, race, class, ethnicity, possibilities. These are all influences that can change or heighten or hamper the educational mix. Hip-hop inspired content and delivery is culturally relevant, and it's well suited to enlighten and edutain students towards a creative and socially just future. As one of the founders of the hip-hop movement alongside DJ Kool Herc, Afrika Bambaataa famously said, "We need the old school. We need the old school vibes of peace, love, unity, and having fun along the way."
Just to briefly contextualise the situation in OAA, since its device and inception in 1992 in the national curriculum, it struggled to maintain a strong position in the curriculum of many schools, and is seen as an appendage to some extent within the curriculum that's difficult to manage and difficult to deliver. We think it offers lots of possibilities that can address some of the issues that have been identified in today's talks. And to do that, we would suggest that you need to return to the roots of outdoor education and understand the values, beliefs, and the philosophies from writers such as John Dewey in experiential learning to fully. And we think that there's a community of practice that has developed outside of physical education, whose voice has been silenced to some degree. And we need to recognize the research that has gone into mental health and well-being, the use of green space, and personal and social development.
Okay, the next couple of slides pertaining to dance highlight that Laban has much to offer contemporary practice, but sadly this isn't always fully materialised. The accepted practice in dance education is Jacqueline Smith-Ortard's Midway model, and this is realised more productively when teachers have a well-stocked toolkit and understand how to use it. Laban has proved immensely useful here for both the novice and the more experienced practitioner. The novice may be versed in the elements of dance, the action, spatial, dynamic, and relationship features, where the more experienced practitioner may be getting into choreotics and eukinetics. So we need to take responsibility for being resourceful, and we need to put the needle on the record, doing so to find harmonious ways to edutain and find a groove for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Saul and Danny. You have some excellent questions in the chat if you have a couple of minutes to engage with those. All right, what I'm going to do regarding our recorded presentation, seeing as we have already taken up your 2 hours of time this afternoon, is to make it available online for you to watch. Lauren was sharing some lovely ideas that they have used in practice in the primary and the secondary schools that she is engaged with teaching at. All right, so it just leaves me to wrap up with some thank yous. Thank you to all of our speakers that we've heard from today. We've had a range of practitioners with some similar concerns during pandemic, and we've given you a snapshot of some of the research that ISPAR and collaborators are engaging with. So huge thank you to all of those. Our theme today was sense of belonging and relationships, and I think we've really seen that. So in the interests of relationships, I invite you to continue the conversation on social media, or please do email me, joanne.hill@beds.ac.uk, if you would like to ask us any questions or collaborate with any of us or our speakers. It's tea time, so it is time to sign off now. Excellent speakers, and thank you so much to all of the audience who have engaged today. Good afternoon and see you later.